This is really putting the vision of Prime Minister Carney in action. You remember when Prime Minister Carney came here in Beijing and met President Xi Jinping. He set the goal to increase our export by 50% by 2030. Financial services are a key enabler to increase our trade with China. We were joined in this mission. I was joined by the governor of the Bank of Canada, the superintendent of financial institutions, CEOs of Manulife, Sun Life, and representative of many of the banks in Canada. I think if you speak to them, they would tell you this was a turning point.
A turning point. Those are not words a government official uses lightly, and the people saying it were not junior delegates or symbolic representatives. The governor of the Bank of Canada, the superintendent of financial institutions, the CEOs of Canada's largest insurance companies, senior Chinese leadership, all in the same room. In Beijing, executing a plan that Mark Carney set in motion the moment he walked into office, and that Donald Trump never saw coming. Because while Washington has been applying tariffs, making threats, and treating allies like leverage points, Canada has been quietly building the alternative. And what just happened in Beijing is the most visible proof yet that the alternative is already operational.
So we just finished our mission here in Beijing. It's 8 o'clock, very full 2 days. This was really, our trade mission was really focused on financial services. This is really putting the vision of Prime Minister Carney in action. You remember when Prime Minister Carney came here in Beijing and met President Xi Jinping. He set the goal to increase our export by 50% by 2030.
50% increase in exports by 2030. That is not a wish. That is not a campaign promise. That is a target being actively executed at the highest levels of two of the world's most significant economies. And it is being built on something that does not generate dramatic headlines in financial services, which sounds technical, which sounds dry, until you understand that financial services are the plumbing of global trade, the infrastructure through which every deal, every export, every investment actually moves. Canada is not just increasing its trade with China, it is embedding itself into the systems that make trade happen. And once you are embedded in those systems, the relationship is not just deeper, it is structural.
And I would say if you want to diversify, you need to show up. I mean, this was pretty clear in our mission here with the governor of Bank of Canada, the superintendent of financial institution. You know, you cannot credibly expect to diversify your trade, which is something that Canada said we will double our overseas trade over the next 10 years. If you want to trade, you need to show up. And I think this was well received by the Chinese side because they saw that we are serious, we are focused, and we are pragmatic in how we want to engage with eyes wide open. You know, it was very clear where we can trade when the interest of Canada and China would align, but also what is off for now. And therefore, I think openness, frankness is key in saying this is what we want to do, this is what we can do, and this is not. This is, for example, sectors where we're not going to engage because our interests do not align. And I think that was very clear and made very clear to the Chinese side as well. So there's a lot of opportunities in the sectors that we have identified where we...
Eyes wide open. That phrase right there is doing a lot of work. Because the criticism that always follows any Canada-China engagement is the same criticism. Are you being naive? Are you being used? Are you trading values for trade volumes? And the answer coming out of Beijing is structured and direct. There are sectors where Canada and China will engage. There are sectors where they will not. Those lines were made clear to both sides in the room. This is not blind optimism. This is not reckless expansion. This is pragmatic diversification conducted with full awareness of the risks and full transparency about the boundaries. And that approach, serious, focused, boundaried, stands in complete contrast to the way Washington has been conducting its international relationships for the past year. Here is the full breakdown of what just happened in Beijing, what it means for Canada, what it means for Trump, and why the timing of it is not accidental. Start with the people in the room, because the level of the delegation tells you everything about the seriousness of the intent. This was not a trade minister flying to Beijing for a handshake and a photo. The governor of the Bank of Canada was there. The superintendent of financial institutions, the person responsible for overseeing Canada's entire banking and insurance system, was there. The CEOs of Manulife and Sun Life, two of the largest financial institutions in Canada, were there. And they were sitting across from China's vice premier and China's minister of finance. This is not diplomacy in the traditional sense. This is institutional alignment. When the people who govern your financial system, regulate your banks, and run your largest financial companies are all in the same room with the equivalent level of leadership on the other side, decisions get made that shape economic direction for decades, not for one trade cycle, not for one election term, for decades. And that is precisely what makes this visit so significant and so threatening to the leverage Washington assumed it had over Canada. Here is the piece most coverage is missing. When people talk about trade, they talk about goods, lumber, canola, oil, seafood. Those are visible. Those are tangible. Those show up in trade figures. Financial services are different. They are the infrastructure, the pipes, the systems through which every other kind of trade actually moves. When Canadian banks expand their presence in China, when Canadian insurance companies deepen their operations in Chinese markets, they are not just doing more business. They are becoming embedded in the financial architecture of the world's second largest economy. And embedded relationships are not just deeper, they are harder to disrupt. A tariff can disrupt a lumber shipment. It can slow canola exports. It can create pressure on a specific sector. It is significantly more difficult to use a tariff to disrupt a relationship where your trading partner's banks are woven into the financial systems of a market serving 1.4 billion people. That is the long game Canada is playing. And it is a game that Washington, focused on short-term tariff pressure, is not positioned to counter. Now the number, 50% increase in Canadian exports to China by 2030, 5 years, from a baseline that already includes billions in agricultural exports, energy resources, and financial services. A 50% increase on that baseline is not a marginal adjustment. That is a structural reshaping of where Canada's economic output goes. And right now, Canada's export dependence on the United States sits at approximately 75% of total exports. That number has been Canada's greatest economic vulnerability for decades. Because when 75% of what you sell goes to one buyer, and that buyer starts using tariffs as a weapon, you have very limited options, unless you have spent the last year building new ones, which is exactly what Canada has been doing. The China deal, the EU partnership, the 20 trade agreements across 4 continents, the safe defense procurement arrangement, the domestic manufacturing expansion. Every single one of those moves is designed to do one specific thing: reduce the percentage of Canada's economic future that is controlled by decisions made in Washington. And the Beijing mission just moved that percentage significantly. Here is the foundation that makes all of this possible. When a reporter asked about deficit concerns, about whether Canada could afford the scale of what it was building, the minister's answer was direct and specific. Canada is a net exporter of oil and gas. Canada has the lowest debt burden in the G7. Canada has the lowest deficit in the G7. Canada has the highest credit rating in the G7. That is not a political talking point. Those are measurable financial positions that give Canada something most countries navigating this level of geopolitical uncertainty do not have: room to maneuver. While other G7 nations are struggling with debt levels that limit their policy options, while the United States itself is carrying deficits that constrain its flexibility, Canada is building from a position of genuine strength. And that strength is what makes the Beijing strategy credible. You can only expand into new financial relationships at this scale if the counterparties believe you are a stable, reliable, credit-worthy partner. Canada's fiscal position is the foundation that makes China want to be in that room. Here is where this becomes politically and strategically significant. Trump's tariff strategy has one essential assumption underneath it. Canada needs the United States more than the United States needs Canada. And for a long time, with 75% of exports flowing south, that assumption had real weight. But every trade deal Canada signs, every export market it opens, every financial institution it embeds in a new economy reduces the accuracy of that assumption. When Canada closes a deal that unlocks $7 billion in Chinese agricultural exports, Canadian farmers have a new buyer. When Canadian banks deepen their presence in Chinese markets, Canadian financial institutions have new revenue streams. When Canada signs 20 partnerships across 4 continents, Canadian exporters have new destinations. And with every new destination, every new buyer, every new embedded relationship, the leverage that comes from being Canada's only significant customer diminishes. That is what Beijing just did to Washington's position. Not loudly, not confrontationally, not with a press release designed to provoke, quietly, institutionally, permanently. Step back. While Trump was mocking Macron at a public lunch, while NATO was being called unreliable, while reporters were being insulted for asking follow-up questions, Canada's governor of the Bank of Canada was sitting in Beijing with China's vice premier and minister of finance building the infrastructure of a relationship designed to last decades. 2 approaches to the same unstable world. One generates headlines, one generates leverage, and the leverage being built in Beijing right now, quietly, institutionally, with eyes wide open, is the kind that does not show up in a single press conference or a single trade announcement. It shows up 5 years from now, 10 years from now, when the percentage of Canada's economy tied to Washington's decisions has shifted and the assumption that Canada needs America more than America needs Canada no longer holds. That is what happened in Beijing. And Washington is only beginning to understand it because the decisions being made quietly are always the ones that matter most in the long run. And if you found this useful, hit like, subscribe, hit the bell.